Hi, I'm Mukund Parthasarathy, and I lead R&D for Dow's packaging and specialty plastics business. On behalf of Dow, I'm proud to bring you this SASE Pro seminar series. It has been great partnering with SASE to provide employees in Dow and other companies with wonderful opportunities to connect with professionals that are passionate about developing Asian heritage talent. Before we get started, I would like to share with you a quick video highlighting some of the accomplishments from our employee resource group called the Asian Diversity Network. I thank you for attending, and I sincerely hope that you enjoy the series.
Thank you so much for joining us here at SASE for this webinar here in April. Holy cow, it's already April. My goodness. Anybody else feel like it's just going way too fast? Like January took more than a month, it feels. And then February, even though we had one extra day this February, it still felt like it flew by. And then March didn't exist. March is a lie. So anyway, that's not why we're here. We're here for a webinar. So thank you so much for joining us here at SASE Pro. For those of you who do not have a background with what we do, with those of you who are like my friend Frank that I just met on the chat, as well as I think it was Linda, but my apologies if I got that name wrong, joining us for the first time. Here's what SASE Pro is. We are tackling this problem, which we call the Asian leadership gap. Asians are shown to be nearly 50% less likely to be promoted to middle management versus our Caucasian counterparts. And that's a massive amount of untapped potential, not only for individuals, but also the companies that we work for. What we find is that there's 4 common reasons that this is the case. And these are general, so it's not everybody has all 4 or whatnot, but these are 4 themes that come through. A lack of political and organizational savvy, cultural deference to authority, ineffective communication and influencing skills, and an aversion to risk-taking. Now, the challenge with tackling these is that there are some barriers. One is just sheer awareness of even the 4 that I've shared with you. 2 is training those isn't just taking any old training class. To be effective, more often than not, you have to have psychological safety, and that requires providing the cultural context with that training, with that leadership training content, and that's not really offered that prevalently. And so we aim to change that. The last thing is the reality is, Asian development is often not a huge DEI priority or huge overall priority. And we ourselves contribute to that because we often don't raise our hands and ask for more opportunities. So With all of that in mind, our solution has been to partner with now well over 100 Asian ERGs across the country and well over 250 Asian ERG leaders and now over 200 Asian executives as well, to create programs that everyone can enjoy and be part of, including this webinar series. Ongoing free series happens monthly wherever you registered on our webpage, saseconnect.org/webinar. You can go there and register for next month's already. We have one roughly once every 4 weeks or so. We'll keep the recordings on the website for 2 months or longer. And so you can view prior ones if you'd like. And just follow us on LinkedIn is honestly the easiest way to stay in touch with what we do. Logistics for this session: there will be a brief presentation from our training partner, and then a moderated Q&A with me. You are welcome to toss questions in the chat. I'll take note of them, and we'll intersperse them in with my questions with our trainers. And so, our trainer, Ryan Takemiya. Ryan and I connected through this Slack channel called the Asian Leaders Alliance, I believe, ALA. Some of you may know what that is. Started by a bunch of ERG leaders out on the West Coast, but that's a different story. So in any case, we connected through that. We had a great chat, and I invited him to be a guest on our webinar series, and here we are. So Ryan is going to talk about overcoming toxic invisibility. And with that, I will stop sharing. Ryan, please hop on and join us here. Here we go. All right.
Unmuted?
You
Okay.
are unmuted. You're good.
Great. Thank you, Parag, for that introduction. And thank you all for being here today. And thank you for having me. I'm a little nervous, so I'm going to apologize in advance for if I stutter at all, because speaking to a whole group of scientists and engineers, I'm a humanities guy. So, and I'd always did very, very poorly at anything STEM related when I was in school. So I'm a little nervous, but hey, maybe that's a good thing, because it actually proves that I created this presentation myself and I didn't use ChatGPT. So this is all my stuff. This is all me. I'm putting it all out there. So anyway, let me go ahead and share my screen. We do this little dance where I share the screen and you all have to wait. And of course I shared it on the last slide. So we're going to go ahead and go rewind here one moment while we get this figured out. Okay, from the beginning, from the top, here we are. A little bit about me. You can see my bio down there. My name is Ryan Takemiya, and you'll see that I come to this DEI work from a background in community organizing. And I'll bet you're probably wondering, what on earth does community organizing have anything to do with DEI? But basically that means that I've been spending the last, 15 years helping Asian Americans heal, express themselves, connect with others, and build cultural and political power from the ground up. And so basically, that's what I do now. I've taken that work and that analysis to Asian American employees and their ERGs. And it's very much intentionally a bottom-up approach, not a top-down approach. I'm not here to tell your C-suite what they need to be doing or what policies they need to change, although that is important, and those are important things to do. But change, top-down policy change can take a while to take effect, months, years even. I'm here to speak directly to Asian American employees and their allies and other employees of color who are experiencing what I call toxic invisibility on the ground right now, and to give them the tools to help them be seen and heard immediately. But let's talk about this term that I use, toxic invisibility. I know that you've never heard of this term before, and I know this because I coined it, and you've never heard of me, so you've never heard of this term before. What is toxic invisibility? Basically, there's a lot of terms that we use to describe what Asian Americans experience in this country, the type of racism that we experience, the type of exclusion that we experience. In the workplace, there are a number of different terms for it. You've probably heard the bamboo ceiling. Parag just talked about how SASE Pro refers to it as the achievement gap or achievement leadership gap. But I was searching for a term that helped helped us understand it from a more holistic point of view, because this sense of not being accepted, or this sense of being rendered invisible, follows us outside of the workplace, and follows us into all other aspects of society, the classroom, even out in public transportation, in the world, in media, in wherever we are. It follows us, and it is quite pervasive. So this invisibility that we face is all-encompassing. And so I partnered with a couple of Asian American psychotherapists out here in the San Francisco Bay Area to talk about this, and they gave me this word toxic that's used often in therapy. And when they use the word toxic, what they mean is that whatever you're talking about is quite literally poisonous. It's poisonous. It is, you know, there can be no good from it. There is absolutely no good. It is always just designed to destroy you, basically. So I call it toxic invisibility because it does that. It follows us wherever we go, even when we're alone, even when we're not near anybody else and no one is there to render us invisible. We sometimes render ourselves invisible. So there are many different ways. In fact, I think there are three specific ways in which this invisibility affects us. There are the external forces of invisibility, where you know, that come from other people. There are the internal forces of invisibility where we sort of erase ourselves. And then there are cultural forces of invisibility that serve to render us invisible as well. So the external forces, these are the ones that we talk about a lot. You know, the racism, the xenophobia. Essentially, we are misperceived, we are misunderstood at best, and that misperception, or those misperceptions about us, then serve to erase us in certain places, and the workplace and beyond. The misperceptions come from a number of different, you know, pervasive myths about us. Actually, there's a handful of myths that persist about Asians and Asian Americans, and that you've probably heard of. There is the myth of the model minority, which is the myth that we are all doing well and that we don't need help, and that we achieved economic success through without any kind of support. Then there's the myth of the perpetual foreigner, which is the myth that Asians will never be truly American, no matter if you were born here or if your grandparents were born here. No matter how much Asians have contributed to the fabric of American culture, we will never be true Americans and fully accepted as Americans, and never will be given all the things that true Americans deserve. Then there's, of course, the myth of the Asian monolith, and that is the idea that Asians are a nameless, faceless mass of people who lack individuality and therefore are expendable or are interchangeable. These myths then serve to erase us in various different places. Then there's the internal forces of invisibility. These are the ones that are psychological, right? We, as Asian Americans, as children of immigrants, as people of color, we develop a very negative self-perception, and you know, this comes in the form of guilt, shame, self-criticism, self-doubt, self-judgment, and these things cause us to censor ourselves, remove ourselves from certain situations, silence ourselves, avoid risk-taking, as Parag mentioned earlier, right? So there are psychological forces at play here as well. And then the ones that are a little bit less talked about, I think, is the cultural forces that serve to render us invisible. And these are when you have two or more cultures in a room and one is more dominant than all the other ones, that can lead to culture clashes, which we, you know, kind of think of as fun and funny. But when one culture is dominant, it has the possibility to actually steamroll and eclipse other cultures in the room, rendering them invisible. Sometimes, you know, silencing them, essentially. You know, the classic example of this, and especially in a workplace context, is, of course, it ranges from the very trite and funny, where an American business person and a Japanese business person meet, and the American business person extends out their hand for a handshake, and the Japanese business person bows, and they quickly realize their mistake, and then they switch. And then the Japanese business person reaches out their hand for a handshake, and the American business person bows, and then they go back and forth like that, back and forth. So that's just like an example of like this like cultural dissonance that's happening where two cultures are meeting and they're not quite fitting together. But when you have a situation where the majority of people in a room or in a workplace or in an office sort of subscribe to a particular dominant culture, then the people who are in the minority culture can often feel like they aren't accepted, or that they're misunderstood. So these are the three elements, I believe, of toxic invisibility that follow us around wherever we go. Again, this is not just in the workplace or the classroom. This follows us even into our own homes. It follows us when we're alone, when we look in the mirror. We have negative self-perceptions of ourselves. We tend to withdraw from certain things because of the way we feel about ourselves. We don't even realize when our culture is being eclipsed, when we actually withdraw our own culture ourselves, when we assimilate to the larger culture. And these things they have the ability to make us feel, left out. So I have developed a three-part strategy to address these that is informed by my background in community organizing and the humanities. And I'd like to walk you through them really quickly, just to give you a taste of what I talk about and what I do here. So I want to start with the internal, the psychological, and then I want to move outward. So internally, I believe that Asian Americans and people of color in general, we need to heal. Like I was saying earlier, I help people heal, I help them express themselves, and I help them connect. This is the first step. The first step is healing. Because not only do we have negative self-perception, or not only do we suffer from negative self-perception, but at the same time, we're also, sort of almost constantly experiencing racial stress. These can be in a form of, in a very small form, like microaggressions against us, people forgetting our names, or they can be in macro forms, in actual outright spite or violence. Even, as we all know, in the past 4 years, Asian Americans have been receiving a lot of the more macro aggressions, especially out on the street. And this puts us in a near permanent state of fight, flight, or freeze. Basically, we are in like a psychosomatic stress response. Our bodies, whether we realize it or not, our bodies are almost constantly on high alert because we're constantly worried about being forgotten or erased or attacked, right? And so the first step is to heal ourselves. First step is to heal. Now, we can achieve a certain amount of emotional self-regulation through therapy. Is obviously the most direct way, but if you don't have time or the money for therapy, there are lots of therapeutic healing practices that we can do as individuals, that we can do on our own. And in my workshops, I talk a lot about these practices and give people the tools for doing these, because these can be incredibly helpful. And whether or not you believe in therapy, studies have consistently shown that behavioral and emotional interventions work just as well, or even better, than medication to treat various mental health conditions, including anxiety, depression, OCD, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the internal stuff. And let's move on to the external stuff. The external forces of invisibility that plague us, those myths that I was talking about before. It's going to take a lot of work to bust those myths in the minds of people who have them about us. But one of the strongest ways that we can do that, I think, is through storytelling. Now, I know that probably some of you out there just let out an audible groan when I said the word storytelling, but I don't mean storytelling in the way that it's used these days in terms of like social media influencers who are, oh, I'm a storyteller, I'm a storyteller. No, I mean storytelling in the original way, almost the primal way of storytelling, the way that we have, that everybody has, the skills of storytelling that everybody has from birth, because our brains are hardwired to tell stories. The more that we can become better storytellers and, like Parag was saying, better communicators, the more that we will actually engage with others, and the more that it will validate our own humanity, and the more that we will connect and create bonds. And I know you're probably thinking, well, I don't want to bother with telling stories, but because it sounds like a bunch of kumbaya nonsense. But let me tell you this: storytelling has some incredible powers that have been shown to have an incredible effect on the listener. So one of my favorite things that happens during storytelling is that when you tell a story, you are actually literally altering the brain chemistry of the listener. For example, when you tell a story that contains even just the littlest bit of suspense, the listener's brain releases dopamine. Dopamine, of course, makes the brain snap to attention, makes the brain increases focus, increases memory, because you're sitting on the edge of your seat and you want to know what happens next, right? So dopamine gets released in the brain. If your story is funny or if it has jokes, then the brain releases endorphins, and endorphins have the ability to reduce stress, sometimes even the ability to reduce pain. Anyone who works out on a regular basis knows the feeling of endorphins through the body. If your story ends on a happy ending or even a sad ending, and is heartwarming at all, the brain actually releases oxytocin. And oxytocin, of course, we know to be a bonding hormone. It helps the listener actually prepare to bond with the storyteller. It increases their ability to have empathy with the storyteller. We call it the cuddle hormone. And then, of course, lastly, if your story is scary or if it's a horror story, the brain releases adrenaline and cortisol, which kind of stresses the person out. So all in all, basically, telling a story has incredible power just by that already. But there's other ways in which storytelling can actually increase memory. So, for example, in 1969, they did a study at Stanford where students were broken up into two groups, and they were told to memorize 12 words in 2 minutes. They had 2 minutes to memorize these 12 words. Group number one was told to memorize the words with just pure rote memorization. They said, just look at the words, repeat them over and over again, and try to memorize them. Group number two was given the instruction to try and memorize the words by stringing them together with a narrative structure. Somehow, just creating a story with those 12 words and try and memorize them that way. Well, of course, over 90% of group two were able to memorize all 12 words, whereas only about 13 or 15% of group one, who were doing rote memorization, memorized all 12 words. So our brains are hardwired to think in narrative structure and narrative form. Another cool thing that happens, and I love this, is the idea of mirror neurons. And there's still science being done about this, but basically in the 1990s in Italy, they did an experiment with monkeys, with macaque monkeys, and they hooked up electrodes to one monkey's brain while it observed another monkey reaching for a banana and eating it. And they found that the parts of the brain that are responsible for motor function lit up in the monkey that was simply sitting there and observing the monkey eating the banana. So basically the macaque that was observing was imagining itself grabbing the banana and eating it simply by watching this other monkey. Now, this was groundbreaking at the time, but we kind of all already know this anecdotally or colloquially. We know that this happens. We do it all the time. Like when somebody walks by you and they stub their toe and they recoil in pain and they go, ooh, ah. You, as the observer, you sit there and go, ooh, ooh, ow, because you know what that feels like, and you're replaying that in your own brain. And actually, you might even be able to feel a little bit of it in your own mind, right? So stories do the same thing. When you tell a story, you are imagining something you're imagining a scene in your mind. And as you imagine that scene in your mind, and you describe it, your listener or listeners imagine the same exact scene. You are mirroring each other, and you're both experiencing a kind of shared hallucination with this story. And when you're done with the story, it feels like you've both gone on this experience together. So stories have this incredible power to help you bond with your listener, help humanize you in their eyes, help them feel like they know you better. And I know that we're all told that in a professional setting, we need to separate the personal from the professional. But if we do that and we stick purely to the professional and we never inject any of the personal, then they might have misperceptions of us and preconceived notions about us, and those will always go unchallenged. Injecting our discourse with personal stories can really, really help replace old ideas and reinforce our own identities and create empathy with the people that are listening to us. Okay, the last part of this three-part strategy has to do with culture, right? I was talking about how cultures can clash and one culture can sometimes overtake another. If one culture is drowning out the other, I believe that it's not enough to simply teach the dominant culture about the minority cultures. And that's what sort of cultural competency is all about. Like, oh, well, you need to learn about other cultures. Well, that's one step. But to go even further than that, I think that everybody who works in an office together or who is in a group together or a team together, any closed group of individuals that are working together would do well to bring all of their culture to the table and then start to create a new one together, right? Incorporate elements of both cultures or of all cultures and to create a new culture that works for everyone. I call this process cultural synthesis. And the idea is very, very simple. And in fact, we actually do it all of the time, and we don't realize that we're doing it. The most obvious examples are artists, of course. Artists and creative type people are the ones who do this professionally, and they know how to do this, and they're rehearsed on this. But anybody can do this. Everybody should do it, and because we all have culture that we bring to the table, we all have culture that can be changed, and culture can change, right? This is the essence of innovation. So what this looks like, or what this could possibly look like, is taking Asian culture, whatever your Asian culture is, or your Asian cultural traits, and taking American cultural traits, and you can either duct tape them together to create something new, or you can take elements of both and rework them and retool them to create something completely different that no one's ever seen before. So as a quick example, here's an example of just duct taping two things together. In speeches, did you know that in America, it is customary when somebody gives a speech, it is customary for them to start their speech with a joke? Because that's kind of how we as Americans feel, that's how we've agreed to, that's the best way to cut the tension and to make everybody feel comfortable. But did you know that in Japan, when people give speeches in Japan, it's customary for them to start their speech by apologizing. They almost always start their speech with the word sumimasen, which either means I'm sorry or it means excuse me. And that's seen as a way of making people feel comfortable because you're getting up and you're being humble, right? You're showing humility in front of this entire group of people. So I don't know if you noticed, but at the beginning of my talk, I did both. I actually, I apologized for feeling nervous, and then I tried to crack a little bit of a joke to see if I could get a chuckle about ChatGPT, right? So I did both. And that's a way of sort of like taking both cultures and sort of jam them together just like that. But there are lots of ways. That's just a surface level example. So let's take meetings, for example. And this has been much talked about in DEI circles about how Asian Americans are often overlooked in meetings. We don't talk as much in meetings. We're interrupted. We don't interrupt others, and therefore we are often left without being able to contribute, and sometimes forgotten. So. And this is because there are two cultures here at play, right? There's the American workplace culture of meetings where it's often expected to talk over each other, to interrupt each other, to jump from point to point, from idea to idea, and a lot of non sequiturs, right? It's sort of like it's like dodgeball. But the Asian cultural forms of speaking especially in groups and in meetings are almost the complete opposite, right? We wait our turn. We wait to be called on sometimes, or we wait for people who with more authority or who are older than us to speak first before we even think about speaking. And in that sense, we often get left behind. So one way, a potential way around this is by taking this idea of synthesizing those two cultures together. Maybe instead of going hard in American culture or Asian culture, but doing something that allows for the Asian people in the room to be able to be seen and heard. And that is like, if they're unwilling to interrupt or jump in or cut people off, then maybe build in a process at the end of your meetings wherein you actually go around the room and call on each and every individual in the room. right? So when the meeting is over, almost over, you say, okay, now we're going to go around and Bob, have you said everything you want to say? Jill, have you said everything you want to say? Jennifer, have you said everything you want to say? And literally point at each and every single person. That way, the Asian Americans in the room get to be called on, get space to speak without having to force themselves to do something that they may not feel comfortable doing, right? These are just simple little tweaks and ideas. I have a lot more, obviously, here that that I'd love to talk about and that I talk about in my workshops, but I'm running out of time. So I just want to just wrap up by saying, you know, this is a very different approach to DEI than you've probably heard. I don't talk about hiring practices or, you know, again, changing policy or anything like that. I'm talking about changing things from the ground up. I'm talking about how employees themselves, individuals and teams can begin the work immediately to start to heal themselves, express themselves better, connect with each other better, and then alter the way they do things, alter the processes in ways that incorporate everyone's culture so that everyone can be seen and heard and understood. This is, I don't know that anybody else is talking about these particular things all together in this one package like this, but this is, I truly believe that this is going to build, well, for lack of a better word, build power from the grassroots level for Asian American employees. So I would love to talk to people more about it. I'm excited about your questions. I'm excited about Parag's questions. I'm excited to talk to Parag about this, and thank you very much. So let's I think that's it. I will go ahead and stop sharing there, and we can get back in. All right.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's see, folks, if you have a question, please toss it into the chat, and I will get to them. So thank you so much. Loved the presentation, Ryan. We have lots of people, lots of comments. Thank you. There was a young lady who mentioned, hey, let's stop being quiet and at least start lighting up this chat with our thoughts. So, you know, they are taking your advice to heart right off the bat. And so
We're getting
which is
started.
fantastic. But I've got the mic, and so I'm going to ask a few of my questions first.
Great.
While others
All right.
come in. But you know, one of the things that one of your slides in there brought up to me is, you know, my parents immigrated to the States in the 60s, and then they moved us to a small town in eastern Kentucky. And my mom still lives there, and this is, you know, 40 years later and whatnot. And we absolutely still are seen like the perpetual foreigners and outsiders and so forth to an extent. But, you know, the stuff that, you know, they were never bothered by, they did not seem bothered by people trying to convert us or people trying to, you know, staring at us or whatnot like that. You know, some questions were just innocent questions, no problem, right? Because we realized good people, they just don't know. They haven't really come across Indian people that much. So, okay. But others were a bit, you know, a little bit more pointed, right? And they just didn't seem as bothered to it. But I did, you know, I'm still scarred to an extent, you know, and so it just makes me wonder, is there a difference based off of generation? And maybe it has to do with choice. They had a choice to come, whereas I kind of didn't. And I was wondering in your research, and was there anything that showed a generational difference, or in one way or the other, quite honestly, in what you've shared with us today?
Yes, absolutely. And it's not quite generational necessarily, but what I've found in my research is that it depends on the circumstances in which folks immigrated. You know, so there's a big divide between folks who immigrated either under dire circumstances or against their will, as opposed to folks who immigrated because they came here, you know, perhaps on an H-1B visa or, you know, educational purposes. They came here for college, you know, so folks who came here under those circumstances often I've found have much more confidence and much more of a secure sense of identity because they have come from relative comfort and understanding of themselves and a sense of who they are as an Asian person in America, right? And they come here thinking, I have so much to contribute to this country and learn from it and contribute and come here with that sort of open-mindedness about it, right? So the folks who come here under much more dire circumstances obviously are in a bit of a, they get thrown for a loop, of course, and their whole worlds are sort of turned upside down, and in many cases they lose a lot by coming here. They've lost property, they've lost money, they've lost lives even. And so they're coming at it from a place of scarcity. And there's these notions in therapy of scarcity versus abundance. And those two ideas really shape the way we view the world. So if you come from a sort of a scarcity, what they call a scarcity mindset, you constantly feel like you don't have enough, or you are lacking, or that things are, the deck is stacked against you and you have to fight in order to survive or to make it in the world. When you come from a place of a mindset of abundance, you have a lot of confidence, you feel secure in who you are and your identity, and you feel like you have much to give and much to receive, and there's enough to go around, and that everything's going to be great. So this can also be seen as like a pessimistic, optimistic point of view, et cetera. So there's many words for it, but essentially I think that's probably what's going on with your parents versus you, because there's a bit of a generational divide, especially growing up in Kentucky, right? So if you are a first generation to be born in America, and you grow up in a place where there are almost no Asians or no Asian Americans around you, then you can develop a bit of a scarcity mindset, thinking like, well, where is everybody? How come I'm the only one? And I have to outperform in order to stand out, in order to be respected, because there's not enough respect or acceptance to go around. Your parents, however, they're probably well educated. They came, and they came here looking for more opportunity, and they probably believed like, oh, I have many things to give here, and much to offer here. So it's a bit of a different mindset.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And boy, I should have sat in the room that I had my Chase Lounge so we could just like do this properly. So
tell me about your mother. Tell me about, yes, yeah.
So I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, Sumit, I did great. I am trying to replicate you, my man. You've got the most beautiful beard in the world, buddy. You and there's a few other folks at WebTech like that. So yes. The storytelling piece, I loved all the different pieces that you mentioned there with, humanizing us, which is super important. And what, and almost to the point you just made as well, is if you came here out of from a place of power, so to speak, of choice versus being forced to, there's plenty of populations or subpopulations within the Asian community who they don't talk about their past, right? And this is cultural as well. They don't talk about their past. They don't even share with their children and whatnot. One of the for those who know, SASE started more on the collegiate side. We've got nearly 100 campuses around the nation, and I do talks with the collegiate folks quite a bit. And in one of our talks, one of our presentations, or in-person ones, I met this young kid who was from Cambodia, right? And so you can probably guess why his family is here, what circumstances his family came over. And so I was asking him about that, and it's like, how much do you know? And it's like, it's not talked about. It's nothing. They can't, and so I encouraged him gently, said, it's painful, but at some point you've got to get those stories out, because otherwise those stories, they go away, they die. And that history, even though it's painful, gets lost. And then we can't tell those stories outside of our because Asian history is not exactly taught, right? Heck, I didn't even know about the genocide in Cambodia until like well into my adulthood. I barely knew about Japanese internment. I I was taught more or less the Japanese internment was kind of a necessity, not. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I've got a colleague whose grandparents were interned, right? And it's a real thing. And so to an extent, the storytelling is even necessary for us to remember,
Yeah.
and to be cognizant of our history. So anyway, I went on my own speech here.
That's
So I
okay.
don't know if I have a question there or not, but
Yeah.
it just occurs to me, especially, with all the, with heck, even the concentration camps, the survivors of geez, my Nazi whatever, that's even being denied nowadays, and
Yeah.
because all those folks,
Yeah.
they're aging out, right? So anyway, but I loved your stub-toed example as well. So
Yeah.
around.
It's so true, right? It's so true. Like we share these experiences all the time simply by looking at each other, simply by being social beings, right? I just saw you drink from your can, and now I'm thinking, well, I'm thirsty, right? Because like we're designed that way, right? So by taking advantage, you can take advantage of that by telling a story. By telling a story, and having people listen, it naturally engages that process of the mirror neurons and the empathy. It's just pure, it's immediate empathy, all like right, right off the bat. And then to go, to address your point about how Asians, we don't talk about ourselves, we don't talk about our family histories. It's considered unprudent to share that, especially with strangers. And I think there's this difference between strangers and people who are familiar to us. I think Asians actually are quite open and quite emotional with our families. There's this stereotype that Asians are quiet and submissive and don't talk. We do that with strangers. We do that when we're surrounded by people we don't know very well. But have you ever seen an Asian person with their family? Oh my God, it's the complete opposite. Right? We are fiery, we are loud, we yell at each other, our arguments, we speak our minds with our families. And so what I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to bridge that divide a little bit. And I'm not saying that Asian Americans should all of a sudden tell complete strangers their family history or anything, but I'm talking about just like sharing what really is. Stories are sharing, they are vehicles for sharing your emotions, whatever emotions you experienced or that you are experiencing. And by sharing those emotions, listeners then feel those emotions with you. You share the emotions together. You don't have to share the deepest, darkest secrets of your family's past, but share whatever emotions you had in the day, right? This morning, waking up. Tell the story about how you woke up and felt like crap because you woke up too early or too late or something. Talk about those emotions. Start small, right? Start there and then build up over time, because the idea is to then be able to share the bigger emotions eventually, but in small spurts, right? We're not getting in front of the whole company and talking about, it's not a therapy session, but yeah, sharing a little bit of the personal and really hook people to then to listen.
That's a great tip, just to start like easing into it, because it can be super uncomfortable if you've never done it before.
Right.
And, I wonder, one of the things, I talk a lot in other forums regarding just Asian leadership behaviors and whatnot. And there's not a right behavior or a wrong behavior necessarily.
No.
It's just what the prevailing is and the comparison between yours and what's prevailing. And that has implications, just because people, right?
Right.
And leadership ultimately is in the eye of the beholder,
Yes.
not in who's trying to be the leader. So you have to adapt. And
Yeah.
I think, in a culture where the personal and professional are completely separate, you're not, if you're in Asia and everyone does that, then you're not at a structural disadvantage if you keep yours separate as well.
Right.
It may not be as mentally healthy. That's a different story. But
Sure.
you're not at least at a professional structural disadvantage. And in fact, if you were to share too much, you might be at a professional structural disadvantage
Sure.
because you're standing out. And in that culture, at least, standing out's not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But that's not where we are. We're here.
Right.
So I think
Right.
even learning how to storytell like peers or getting closer to that is just part of, becoming a better leader for those that you are aiming to lead, or presuming you are trying to lead, I suppose.
Right.
And I think I often hear people also call that assimilation, and assimilation, I guess, is supposed to be a bad word. And
Right.
yeah, I think if you're losing who you are, but I mean, how would you kind of address that? It's like, where is it okay? Where is it not okay? When are you like giving up who you are versus not? Or how do you even think through that type of thing?
Yeah, I believe that achieving inclusivity in the workplace or anywhere is a two-way street. It's not just everything needs to change to fit me. Uh, Things need to change, but I also need to do some work as well. And so again, it's a meeting in the middle, and that's why I talk about this notion of cultural synthesis. I think it's so important that we at least bring what we have to the table, and then listen to what other people have, and then work on combining those two. But if we're not even bringing what we have to the table, I mean, we're not even telling people who we are. Then that's we can't even get there, right? So there needs to be, in my opinion, I think there needs to be this understanding of culture as a like I said, whenever you're in a group, in like a defined group of people, whether that's a team or that's a class of people, classroom, or whether it's a band, whatever it is, everybody brings something to the table, and you have to then work out figure out what's going to work best for that team, for that group, right? So earlier you mentioned psychological safety, and that actually reminded me of this thing that I was going to talk about if I had time. Google, the company Google, they did a study on their teams, and they tried to figure out which teams were more efficient and why. Why were some teams more efficient than others? And they figured out that there were 5 elements that made a team more efficient. And those were things like the team members had to feel like their work mattered, that their work was making a difference, that they were being heard. But the number one thing that was most important for a team to work efficiently and function together was psychological safety. If the team did not have psychological safety, or if there wasn't enough psychological safety, the team members felt like they couldn't speak, or that they couldn't make mistakes, or else they would fear being reprimanded, right? But those teams that had psychological safety, they felt more open, they felt able to express themselves and talk, make mistakes, make suggestions that might seem crazy, and those teams worked the best and were the most efficient. And so what they did is they changed the culture of their teams ever so slightly, and they created this process where every month or every couple weeks, each team would just do a check-in on those 5 items and say, how are you feeling in terms of psychological safety? How are you feeling in terms of, is your work rewarding? How are you feeling in terms of this? How are you feeling in terms of that? And they would literally just spend 10 minutes on those subjects every month. And over the course of like 6 months to a year, all those teams that did that increased their efficiency. So it's a matter of taking a hard look at your group, whatever your group is, taking a look at the different cultures that are being brought to the table, tweaking processes just a little bit to make people feel more seen and heard, and being a part of that process yourself, being a part, a full member in that process. As Asian Americans, we need to be a full member in the process of changing this culture together, instead of just saying, oh, well, folks need to change to fit me, right?
Yeah. No, I love that story, and that that information. That's huge. That's really, really impactful. And now I'm got to figure out, Jessica's going to hold me to hold me to task here as well. I've got to now do that in our in our meetings. I think it's a great idea. Actually, that's a fantastic idea to just do a check-in on, okay, here are the things that are important and whatnot. So I appreciate that. Folks, if you do have questions, please do go ahead and type them into the chat. Also, you can use the hand raise function. We did have a question before. There was a lot of conversation on the chat regarding speaking up and how to get a word in and what some tips or techniques could be. So this individual asked, what if I don't mind being calm, quiet, composed, and actually appreciate this part of yourself, but at the same time, if you're the only Asian at a meeting, but at the same time, you're the only Asian at a meeting group, any advice, suggestions on how I can enjoy it myself, but at the same time, not be the stereotype? So, you know, what aspect, because to an extent, I guess this kind of gets to, are we, you know, how much of us is us versus having to represent, right?
Right.
To an extent.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you feel comfortable in that situation, then keep on keeping on. There's no need to change. But you know, it's more for if there are folks who are in meetings and they are getting steamrolled, but they want to speak, they are hoping to actually get a word in edgewise, but cannot, then there are ways to tweak that as well. And you know, I gave one example, but there's other ways to do it. I think, you know, if there were, like, for example, if somebody were in a meeting and they wanted to speak, but they keep getting interrupted or talked over, and it's not in their nature to interrupt and talk over people, kind of like what you're saying, well, there, you know, we kind of need to change you kind of need to change a little bit and try a little bit, try something different. But I don't want to tell the cool, calm, quiet, collected person that they need to now jump in there and you know, chop it up with everybody. But let's say, for example, well, this person said that there's no other Asian Americans, but let's say, for example, there were other Asian Americans in the room. Maybe if there were another Asian American who was more comfortable with interrupting or interjecting, then that person, if they saw or they knew that the other person was calm, quiet, and collected and didn't like interrupting, then they could then take it upon themselves to interrupt on their behalf or interject on their behalf and say, hey, wait a minute, we haven't heard from Joe in a while. Joe, do you have anything to say? You know, so like, again, we come from like collectivist cooperative cultures, and that is a little bit more in our nature to actually look out for other people, right? So in that sense, again, you're combining two cultures there. You're interjecting and interrupting in an American way, but you're doing it for somebody else, right? In kind of an Asian way, right? So that's what I'm talking about. We can get creative with our responses to simple little workplace, you know, workplace things.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's a great example. And it actually reminds me of a story that someone was telling me where they enlisted their manager or a peer because they still felt uncomfortable. And so they talked with it about their manager, or it was a peer, I forget. And they were working on it together. And this individual would either like raise a finger or look or something, give a look or whatnot, give a signal to that individual. Hey, I think so-and-so, I think Ryan has a great, I think Ryan might have something that he wants to contribute or something like that, just to try and create the space versus going it alone. And then, you know, through that could also just kind of build up skills over time. So I'm going to take Sally's question real quick, and then that'll be our last one. So Sally, if you want to unmute and ask your question, go ahead.
Thank you. What a great discussion. It was a fabulous presentation.
Thank you.
I have one comment, one question. I'm privileged to have 4 Chinese cousins, and it's a great experience to talk about how they feel like they always have to be so high achieving, that's how they have to combat their invisibility. And it's just a discussion that I'm privileged to have with them. My question is around, when we go into groups, we talk about psychological safety, but one of the things that I see people do is they'll say, so everyone define what makes you psychologically safe, but people won't have any language for that. So what do you use? Like, how do you help people identify the specific thing that would make them psychologically safe? Because it's different for different people. and like come up with
Yeah.
like, I'm trying to figure out the best way to help when we go into groups to lead that, to give them that language. So thank you.
Thank you, Sally, for that question. Excellent question. Yes. So this, one of the things that I have taken from my work in community organizing is that the process of change is a long one, and it requires consistent, constant work. I unfortunately don't have a one-size-fits-all immediate way of helping people find the way to describe what they're experiencing. What I do have is a long-term solution for that, which is storytelling. And this is where we get into the storytelling aspect of it. The more you practice storytelling in a workplace setting, the more those things, those pain points will come out. But this requires work. This requires training. This requires storytelling in kind of a moderated, facilitated space. So one of the things that I actually offer, I'm not trying to sell you on this, but one of the things I actually offer is I offer a long-term partnership with an organization where I come in once a month or once every other month, and I lead actually a storytelling salon, usually just for Asian American ERGs and their members. And what this is, it's like a closed door group session where we get together and we just tell stories. And it's sometimes it's people's first time ever trying to tell a story in front of a group of people. And it's usually a small group of people, 5, 10 people, 20 people, that's it. But you start there, you start really small, and you do it over time, over and over time. And the more you do it, the more you get people to, and again, like I said before, you start small with just a story about your day, story about getting out of bed, whatever. The more you do that, the more it turns into stories about, things that really matter, bigger emotions, bigger pain points. And that's where you develop the language for how about psychological safety, because then it will come out in terms of like, oh, well, when this person did this, it made me feel like this, and I didn't like that, or whatever. And so now, okay, now that I understand that, now I can start to talk about how that happened and why it happened, right? So this is a long-term solution that takes a lot of concentrated effort from everyone involved. Everybody has to be really kind of all in with the storytelling, and again, and the healing also. We got to be doing the healing at the same time. But that's kind of on an individual basis. Everybody working on their own personal self-actualization that helps them then speak up, or that helps them then tell the stories, and then those stories then help the culture shift, right? So it goes from internal to external to cultural.
Wonderful.
I
Thank you
really,
so much, Green.
I really appreciate that. I was just going to say, when somebody might not be aware of what's their trigger,
Yeah.
if they give permission, obviously, to their group, because the group could often hear where the danger signal is, right? It might be very apparent to the people in the room if it's a compassionate circle. And what a great strategy. I really appreciate it. I'm going to use that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Sally. Thank you, Ryan, so much. That hour flew by really quickly. Folks, if you can, please take a few seconds, answer the feedback survey. There are 3 questions, so you need to scroll down. 1 is not so good, and 10 is phenomenal. The best thing I've ever seen. Well, no, 10 is very, very good. So I don't want to make it so high so that we don't 10s. But a lot of 10s coming in so far, so that's good. Just if you're curious what else is going on with us, our next webinar is with Sheena Yap Chan. She's had a podcast for a number of years and then wrote a book, The Tao of Self-Confidence. You can pick that up on Amazon or anywhere else books are sold, I'm sure. But you can join us May 7th for that conversation. We also have our Women's Leadership Conference coming up. This is at the end of this month, April 26th, on wlc.saseconnect.org. Jessica, if you could toss that link into the chat, that'd be wonderful. It is a full day of virtual programming. We'll have so far I think we've got about 350 tickets sold. This one's not paid. This is what helps keep our lights on, so to speak. Along with our national convention will be in October. We've got a little bit before we start talking about that one, but lots of programs or lots of workshops during this one-day event. We are at $200 a ticket, and we are nearing 250 when the late when the late pricing kicks in. So hurry up. Lots of fantastic trainers, several of whom we featured on this webinar series in the past. For more information, you can go to our website, see a lot of the different programs that we offer. You can follow us on LinkedIn. If you have an Asian ERG that is not connected with us, just reach out to us at pro@saseconnect.org, and we can get you hooked up. There are no membership fees or commitments, or we kind of make it painfully simple. So with that, I will close. We are a minute over the hour. Sorry about that. It's happy hour time. It's 5 o'clock here, Ryan.
Awesome.
Thank you
I
so
wish.
much for the conversation. Really appreciate
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Sage, for having me. It's been an honor.
it. Cool. We'll talk soon. All right.
All
Thanks, everybody.